Welcome to the Jerry Ratcliffe Show. I'm Chris Graham. I've got the Hall of Famer Jerry Ratcliffe with me. We're going to talk some UVA baseball as the Who's are headed to another College World Series, sixth time in 15 years for Virginia baseball to be headed to Omaha after a 12-2 win in Game 3 over Duke to take that series 2-1. Jerry, what a weekend, what a couple of weekends in Charlottesville, but particularly this last weekend. Not only, winning the series in 3 games, a couple of blowout wins, lots of home runs the last 2 days, but beating Duke, I mean, the fans and all the crowd, the huge crowds, record crowds, just a great weekend for Virginia athletics.
No question about it, Chris. If you're a Virginia fan, it provided you with pretty much everything you could dream for, including a ticket to Omaha. But incredible pitching for the second weekend in a row. Some of the most impressive hitting I've ever seen in covering Virginia over all these years, and lots of drama, good competition, and electric crowds for sure.
I ran some of the numbers each of the last 2 weekends, the pitching, because Virginia got so much from its starters. I mean, it was in such a stark contrast to Duke. Duke used 9 pitchers on Sunday in Game 3, and that really is Duke's strategy. The coach, Chris Pollard, kind of using the Tampa Bay Rays strategy of openers and all that kind of stuff. But Virginia going the traditional route. This past weekend in the Super Regionals, 22 2/3 innings pitched from the starters, 1.99 ERA. The weekend before, 18.1 inches, 18 1/3 innings from the starters and a 1.47 ERA. Brian Edgington going 9 innings, complete game yesterday in the Game 3 win. They didn't need him to go 9 innings. It was a 12-2 ball game when he went out for the 9th, but he said after the game he was going to make them send him out there no matter what. This has to make Virginia, I mean, I think they have to be one of the favorites. They're scoring 9 runs a game in June. They're giving up less than 2 per game in June. This is a team playing as good a baseball as you can imagine at this stage.
Oh, no question about it. Those guys being able to pitch deep into games and having the grit and determination they had. I thought it was funny when we asked about Connolly early the day before, and O'Connor said he might not have known it, that we had somebody warming up in the bullpen, and he had a couple of guys on base, and we were thinking about maybe making a change there. And we looked out at the mound, and Early looked at us and pounded on his chest like, "I got this. I'm not coming out," and went on and finished it off. And you have to admire that kind of tenacity in that pitching staff, and that all those guys seem to possess it. And wow, they had just total command of their pitches. I know that both those guys, I think, were, or maybe all 3 starters had 4 pitches they could rely on. And Duke, to this day, still haven't figured out Edgington's split finger, which totally handcuffed them throughout the day. But, and it spares your bullpen, which, some people don't have as much faith in Virginia's bullpen as the coaches do. So the fact that they were able to save those arms and keep their staff fresh, it's probably a good thing headed to Omaha, because you've got a whole collection of fresh arms making that trip.
And you talked Jerry about the offense. 5-4 loss in Game 1, and Jay Geloff just missed what would have been a walk-off 3-run homer. It didn't sound good off the bat, but he got some carry off that to the left center field fence. But no doubt in Games 2 or 3, 26 runs combined in those 2 games, 14-4 win Game 2, 12-2 win Game 3, 4 homers in Game 2. I think it was 2 in Game 3. But just the 5-run second inning in Game 2, or excuse me, in Game 3, that really changed the tone of that game. And even both games when Duke responded, I think it was the 4th inning of Game 2. It was a 4-0 lead for Virginia. Duke scored 3 to make it 4-3. Virginia came right back and scored some runs, put up 4 spot next half inning up. Did the same thing yesterday when Duke hit a fly ball 2-run homer. That was one that was humidity aided, if anything else.
Yeah.
made it 5-2 in the top of the sixth. Virginia answers right back with 4 in the bottom of the sixth. For just a couple of brief moments this weekend, Virginia had a slight bit of challenge, but each time that happened, the offense responded.
Yeah, both times they just slammed the door on Duke with those bounce back innings at bats. And Chris Pollard, the Duke coach, pointed out, he said, that's the hallmark of a really good team is when you put up a couple runs and think you're maybe fighting your way back in it, they just come back and kick you really hard. And that's what really good teams do. And they don't allow you, that stopped any Duke momentum or any chance to build momentum, and actually propelled Virginia's momentum and continued on that hitting onslaught that they put up both days. And Duke had no answer really for that kind of a hitting attack. Like you said, they used every pitcher they had just about yesterday, except for probably their best pitcher, who Pollard said at that point there was no point putting him in late in the game because the game was already out of control pretty much. But yeah, the fact that they were able to answer like that should serve them well out in Omaha, because there's probably going to be some sticky moments where they're going to need to slam the door on people and bounce back like that to be able to survive and advance.
Yeah, Scott Sherman texted me during the game yesterday. He said any Duke pitcher not used today should be considering getting into the transfer portal. As many guys as they used yesterday. If you're not one of those guys, maybe you should be thinking about going somewhere else next year. That's how many guys they used all year, though. I mean, that's a Duke team.
Yeah,
Pollard, his leading starter. I'm forgetting which guy it was, but he had 17 starts and still he averaged less than 4 innings per start. So they used that system and it got them to that stage. I mean, they were up 1-0 in the super regional round with using more of their depth of their pitching staff than the strength of any individual guys. But again, back to Virginia. This is a team that does have a deep bullpen, but we didn't really see that this much this weekend because they threw 27 innings as a staff and 22 in a third were those starters. Even Nick Parker in game 1, he didn't have his best stuff. That was obvious. He had a good first inning in game 1, but after that, he was really scuffling out there, but he still pitched into the 7th inning was a great option out there and actually left with the lead. So this really says a lot about, and all 3 of those guys, Jerry, are transfers. And it says a lot about how Coach O'Connor, Drew Dickinson in particular, have mastered the transfer portal the last couple of years. They've picked up some valuable guys from that portal.
Yeah, I don't know of anybody that's been as smart as Virginia's baseball staff in finding guys through that portal that have really helped them. I noticed that in the post-game chats with East Carolina's coach and with Duke's Chris Pollard, they both said that that's something that they have failed to do, and that look at Virginia as an example of how you can really blend in some experienced veterans that will really balance out particularly your pitching staff. And that's something ECU and Duke didn't do very well. And both coaches admitted that they're going to have to pay more attention to it, which is probably something that coaches in all sports are probably going to have to get better at over the next year or two. But credit to O'Connor and his staff, Dickinson and McMillan and all the other guys on that staff for being so sharp and finding guys that fit just right. And it's not like that they went out and got guys out of big time Power 5 staffs. They got Early from Army, and Parker from Coastal Carolina, and Edgington from Elon. So those guys maybe flew under some people's radar, but certainly not Virginia's. And look at the job they've all done. It's been magnificent. And somebody teasingly asked Edgington yesterday, he says, you 3 guys came from the portal. do you have any kind of a nickname for yourselves or not? Because, 3 guys from the portal and you've been so good. And Edgington was caught off guard by that. He said, no, we really don't. We all live in U Heights, so maybe we should be the U crew. I think probably with all the smart Virginia alum out there, we can come up with a better nickname for those 3 than that. So we're taking all suggestions and nicknaming this trio of transfer pitchers.
Yeah, talking about the transfers, Virginia mined one coaching change very well. When I was researching Connolly early for a piece earlier last week, he left Army, as you noted. He left there. He put his name in the portal after Army made a coaching change. And that was when Jim Foster, who had led the Army West Point team to the NCAA tournament last year, he left to take the job at Northwestern. So Early put his name in when his coach left for Northwestern. Well, when Northwestern made a coaching change, that's when Ethan O'Donnell decided to put his name in the portal. Virginia ends up with both guys. They end up with a guy who's got 12 wins and a guy who's got, 13 home runs at the top of the lineup. So that's paying attention to the portal. That's paying attention to the names that are out there. And I loved one thing, Jerry, that Coach O'Connor said after the game yesterday, because, we talked about how this is Virginia's sixth appearance in the last 15 years in Omaha. And he said, yeah, this might be our sixth. This might be the program's sixth appearance, but this is this team's first appearance. And so he really wanted to put the emphasis on. Now, there's some guys who were on the team in 2021, Kyle Teal and Jake Geloff particularly, who were, they were young guys on that team, but they were contributors that year. But for this group, when I'm heading out on Thursday night, I'll get to, see what the UVA folks do. You've been out in past years, in terms of, hitting the restaurants and having fun and that kind of thing, going to the zoo and all that kind of fun stuff. But, for the players, this is, as a group, this is their first time out there. And also O'Connor said, for a lot of programs, they go out there, they just want to get to Omaha. Every huddle is from February on, go to Omaha. But this group doesn't want to just go to Omaha. They want to bring back a championship.
Yeah, and I love that mentality. You've got to appreciate that because certainly Omaha is a bucket list experience for most college fans, particularly college baseball fans. It's a unique environment. It's like going to major league games because you've got essentially a major league stadium. You've got incredible fan support, and the community really embraces the event and does a magnificent job with it as host. But it's kind of an empty feeling because I've been out there when they didn't win the World Series, but played well, but came up empty, and it's kind of an empty feeling for those teams, I think, to have gotten there and can't finish the job. So it was sort of Al Groh's old approach to bowl games. So we're not going for the Disney World rides and the parades and the entertainment and all that stuff. We're going to win, and that's the mentality I've always appreciated from coaches. They're there for a purpose. You can have the fun and celebration afterward, but while you're there, take it seriously, take care of business. That's job one. And all the partying and all that stuff can come after you've won the trophy and did the dog piles and all that stuff. And while we're mentioning, you mentioned O'Donnell, I think he's one of the most underrated guys on the staff. I get what he's done has been kind of overshadowed by Teal and Geloff's incredible power and hitting, but O'Donnell, we look back and he's had 27 hits this season when he led off an inning, which has made a big difference. It did in these playoffs, getting that lead runner on base and making magic happen. So he's been tough all along, but getting to Omaha is only part of the job. Winning is is the big thing, and it's a tremendous feeling to walk out of that place with the College World Series trophy on your plane ride back home.
Two Ethans, Ethan O'Donnell, Ethan Anderson. So it's easy to get lost when your name's Ethan on this roster. They both have, I think they both have 13 home runs. They're both boppers in the lineup. And then they're in between them are Jake and Kyle, and then you have Griff O'Farrell, who led off game 2 with the home run, got his first home run of the season. And he picked a good time for that. And then he was 4 for 5 in game 3 and setting the table for that offense yesterday. Yeah, there's so many guys.
I think I confused O'Farrell's numbers with O'Donnell's. Yeah, O'Farrell's the one with the 27 first leadoff hits, I think.
But it might be the case, yeah, because one of the guys, maybe it was early after Saturday's game, was talking about. He said, I don't know what the exact number is, but he's got to be hitting 600 leading off an inning.
Yeah,
he always seems like he's on base.
That's O'Farrell. I get him and O'Donnell mixed up sometimes.
Well, there's 2 Ethans. There's an O'Donnell and O'Farrell. It's easy to. But plus, we're on our second Gale off, who's going to be a first-round pick, or coming up here in about a month. Teal will be a top pick as well. So no, there's so much going on there. Now there is a nice personal story here. UVA fans know that Ron O'Connor, of course, he was born in Omaha, grew up in Cedar Bluffs, Iowa, just across the river. His dad took him to, him and his brothers to the College World Series when they were kids growing up. Brian kind of choked up a bit yesterday when he was talking about his father and how he can't wait to get back home just for that. Talk about that story, if you would.
Yeah, that was a precious moment in yesterday's post-game press conference. I've known Coach O'Connor ever since he's come to Charlottesville from Notre Dame, and just a great human being. And I think that's maybe the first time I've ever seen him get emotional after a game, and obviously for a good reason. He lost his father in the fall. He was away from the program for about 10 days, came back, and his mom is still living and out there, and he said he can't wait to go home and give her a kiss and spend some time with her. He and his dad were extremely close, as everyone knows, or maybe they don't know, but I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and look through my notes or ask Brian. Brian is one of the 3 players on that statue out in front of the Ameritrade Stadium in Omaha, symbolizing college baseball. And I think this goes way back to maybe 10 or 11 years ago, 2011, when I think I was out there for my first College World Series. And it seems like he told me that they were looking for models of people to be on that. I think the guy who ended up building the statue or
yes,
the statue, I think he had contact with Brian's father. I think maybe those guys were friends or something, and somehow Brian got in there. I think his dad supplied some pictures or something.
Well, I think I found your story when I was researching that angle from the archives from the Daily Progress from back in the day. And what the story said was something like the sculptor who designed it and built it, 1,500-pound statue, happened to I guess he was a friend of Brian O'Connor's father, John, and happened to be in his office saying he was looking for inspiration. He looks up and he sees this photo.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's where it was. And
I forgot, it's been such a long time.
yeah. So it's one of those things where UVA's coach is in the statue as a result of that nice tie to Brian's father.
Yeah, and certainly I can imagine his emotions will be flowing when he goes back home and goes into that stadium again. Because I guess when he was growing up, they they played in the old stadium out there in Omaha that I think is now just, I'm not sure what they're doing with it. Last time I was out there, it was still up. I think that maybe they were planning on taking it down, but a lot of warm memories of the new place too, because that's where Virginia's played, I think, all their College World Series appearances in. It's Ameritrade, which is a beautiful stadium, and should stir a lot of emotions about him and his dad, who I'm sure came to all Virginia's games out there when Virginia played. And Omaha is, I guess, sort of a second home to Virginia baseball because they've one been there so much, and there's a bar not far from the stadium, I don't think, that I went over and did a story there a few years ago too. I think it's Barry O's, I believe
Okay.
is the name of it. And that's where Brian O'Connor bartended when he was at Creighton University, a player at Creighton. And I don't know how hard he worked, but he was there a lot. And Barry O told me some interesting stories, and they put a Virginia flag out front every time, and it's kind of Virginia Central in Omaha when the Cavaliers are out there, and it's a cool place, frequented by tons of Wahoo fans when they're out there. I highly recommend you go by there and say hi to Barry O and the other guys in the crowd out there. But
That's the kind of intel I was looking for, Jerry. This being my first trip to Omaha. Yeah. So I knew that there was a place like that. And now I've got the information. So that's what else? There are people tuning in now who are going to be making the trip out. For those who maybe are going out for the first time in a while, first time ever, what kind of things can people be, because there's time in between games. We're not playing games every day with, at least UVA's not playing games every day. So what can folks do out there between UVA games?
well, I'll tell you one thing: if you like steak
Yeah.
or any kind of beef, that's the place to be. With the stockyards there, and there's some I can't remember the names of them. I'd have to look them up, but it's been a while since I've been there. But there's some fabulous restaurants out there, steakhouses. There's a nice area not within walking distance, easy walking distance of Ameritrade, that has tons of restaurants and bars that fans frequent a lot while they're out there. I can't speak to a whole lot more than that because I was so busy writing stories on both my visits out there. Even on the days off, we would attend UVA's practices, which were usually were held at Creighton there in the city, and not a whole lot of time for the media to really enjoy themselves. So might have to visit some other Virginia fans who've been there to find out more places to go. But that's what I can tell you about from personal knowledge. But
Steak and Barrios, I can go with that.
Steak and Barrios, plenty of watering holes, so to speak, and don't forget your sunblock, because if it can get really hot out there in the cornfields of Nebraska. I'm telling you. One of the times I was out there, we were having tornado warnings. So you don't be surprised if that happens and you hear sirens go off all over the city, like the old air raid sirens. Some of us grew up listening to, and we had some flooding. I think the last time I was out there, there was floods from the river there near the stadium that flooded the parking lot, and some street signs were underwater. That's how high the flooding was. So hopefully you won't have to deal with any of that it'll just be sunny and warm, and all you'll have to worry about is sunglasses and sunblock.
I'm looking at the forecast right now on my phone. By Sunday, no, so Friday and Saturday, unusual, 81 degrees each day. That's unusual for that time of year out there. But then it gets to be 90, and then it stays 90 or more every day for the duration. So, and we certainly, from the Virginia fan standpoint, hope that we're out there for the duration as far as that goes. But yeah, it's the Midwest. There's tornadoes, there's hot weather, there's all kinds of stuff that can be in the case. And as I mentioned, this is unusual at this stage. You get to the College World Series. The next two rounds sort of mimic the first two rounds in the sense that next round is a double elimination 4-team tournament, just like the regional round, and then you have a best of 3 final, just like the super regional round. But where we are now is, you're not playing every day. I mean, Virginia either plays Friday or Saturday, and then they play Sunday or Monday. They have a day off in between. Mm-hmm. If you get past the second game, if you're a winner's bracket, I think you have 2 days off then. If you're a loser's bracket, you have 1 day off. But so, yeah, that's, and Virginia at least has navigated this before. Certainly this being the 6th trip in 15 years, and Brian O'Connor played in the World Series back in 91 himself. This coaching staff knows, you gotta be patient. I mean, baseball's a game you play every day, and all of a sudden now you're not playing every day. So, they've had to do this before. They know what they're doing as far as that goes.
Oh, no question about it. He and Coach Mack have been there multiple times, and I guess they know all the tricks of the trade and all the things, to all the pitfalls of being out there and having to wait. I'm sure that I wouldn't want anybody but those guys making my schedules out, and they know how to keep their players occupied, I'm sure, and how to get them prepared for the next game. It can be a long stay if there's any weather delays that stop a day or anything. You can be out there for 10 days or longer, depending, which is, it's a long time to be anywhere that's not home.
Yeah.
So that goes for the fans too. But obviously fans can occupy themselves a little easier than a bunch of college age baseball players. So, but O'Connor has the experience. He knows what to do, and I'm sure he will have everything under total control like he always does.
So they're heading out. I keep checking as we're recording this. I keep checking my email to see if we have the word on when the Virginia is playing. And I just see that there's a media event tomorrow at 1:00. So that's really I got excited there for a second, Jerry. I saw an advisory Virginia baseball and thought maybe they're telling us the schedule. But we won't know when Virginia plays until I guess tonight, when all the super regionals are concluded. Right. But in any case, we know it's either Friday or Saturday. And we know Virginia's playing Florida. And Virginia, the number 7 national seed, Florida, the number 2 national seed. Familiar foes as far as the programs, at least. Virginia back in 2015, the national championship season, was matched up in the bracket, at least the 4-team bracket with Florida. Had to get past Florida to get to the championship series round. And I haven't looked this up, Jerry, so I'm going to say this out loud and hope I'm still right, that the coach of Florida is a former Who. Is that still the same guy?
I believe so. I think he's still there. And
also, I'm gonna look it up while you're talking.
Also should be pointed out that Florida tried to hire Brian O'Connor several years ago, and he turned them down. So
it's still Kevin O'Sullivan. Yeah, it's still former catcher at UVA. Actually, when I was there in the early 90s. So
I thought he was still there, and he's built a heck of a program down there. And I mean, they're as good as anybody in the country year in and year out. So I'm sure he and O'Connor are very close, and will probably take a few friendly jabs at each other during the week.
Well, I guess LSU, I'm saying this out loud. Well, they were winning when I turned the game off last night. I think, did LSU go ahead and advance?
They did.
So that's another one. Hey, we almost broke some news on our podcast a couple of years ago. If you remember, Jerry, we
did break some news.
We did break some news. We didn't even know we broke the news, but apparently LSU reached out to O'Connor a couple of years ago, and we had that news here before we even knew we had it here on the podcast 2 years ago, previewing UVA Tennessee. So, so there's some ties there. I know UVA played TCU in the World Series at least back in 2014 with that really good O'Connor team that made the championship series and lost to Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
So there's some familiar, there's some familiar foes here coming up, potentially in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, when Paul Maneri, who was Brian O'Connor's coach at Creighton, excuse me, he was his the first guy that hired him as a pitching coach at Notre Dame. Got his college coaching career started at Notre Dame, and he said the first guy he reached out to hire was Brian O'Connor. I think they had mutual friends, a former pro baseball guy whose name escapes me, Jim something.
I know you're talking about, and it escapes me as well. Yeah.
But anyway, when Maneri decided he was going to step down at Notre Dame, or excuse me, at LSU, he recommended LSU to hire Brian O'Connor to be the LSU next baseball coach. LSU is recognized as the top college baseball program in the country. And so I'm sure that LSU is going to come at him and throw a lot of big numbers at him. And Brian turned him down to stay at Virginia, as he's turned down several overtures from great programs throughout the years. Virginia is very fortunate to have held on to him. And Paul Maneri revealed that during our podcast, Chris, which we thought had been pointed out somewhere along the way, but obviously it had not. I think we had double-digit thousands of LSU fans listening to that podcast that day. Because it was news to them too.
it was news to me in a sense too. Yeah, we posted the podcast. We thought, hey, I agree. We thought, hey, he must be saying something we've already heard. And then the Baton Rouge newspaper the next day had a big headline. Hey, Paul Maneri says that LSU reached out to Brian O'Connor, and I'm like, Jerry, did we know that before?
Yeah, they gave us some nice credit in their story down there. We appreciated that.
That's right.
But,
we gotta figure out a way to break some more news this week, right?
yeah. Maybe somebody else will offer him a job after this year's over.
Just don't take it, Coach. Just don't take it.
I don't think he's going anywhere now.
I don't think he's going anywhere at this stage. No. So I'll say out loud now, as we're probably moving towards wrapping up our show here, since I'll be out in Omaha this week. Jerry, I'll be your man on the spot. We'll catch back up, and I'll report from out there. Of course, you'll be reporting from the home office as well, but we'll compare some notes and have try to talk a few times while the UVA's in this run. We hope they're there for a while. We got to talk a lot between now and a couple weekends away. So. But yeah, this is an exciting time for Virginia baseball fans. Second time in 3 years, sixth time in 15 years that Virginia baseball's in a College World Series, and we know a lot of fans are paying attention.
Definitely one of the top programs in the country, and the fact that there's two ACC teams in the 8-team field with top-seeded Wake Forest, the conference is well represented with the only two teams from the ACC that have ever won a College World Series, which is kind of fitting. So that'll be fun watching those two teams progress. And who knows, maybe they'll end up playing for the first time for the whole shebang, as they say.
Yeah, they didn't even play this season. That's how the conferences work. These two teams did not meet in the regular season this year. Wake Forest, just number one most of the season. Had 9 homers in their clincher over Alabama this past weekend. Just obviously a team that can put it in play, and and they're on the other bracket. So those two teams could sweep their brackets and meet up next weekend. That wouldn't be so bad for us as far as that goes. Love to see Wake Forest and Virginia in that final.
That would be a lot of fun, no question about it.
So Jerry, as we're getting ready to wrap up, we haven't talked any other. I don't know that there's been a lot of football or basketball news, but if there's anything there, update us on that, and then we can maybe start getting ready to wrap up here.
Well, this past week we had some updates on some football commitments and a couple other basketball items that you can find on my website. But the one that's worth mentioning right now is Virginia is in a serious recruiting war for one of the top 16 players in the country, Con Canupel from up in Wisconsin, which is prime Tony Bennett recruiting territory, as we've seen
Yes.
past years. Canupel he led the whole EYBL circuit in scoring this spring. He's a sharpshooter. He's a 6'5" shooting guard and averaged 22.5 points per game during the entire spring. That's a nice average. He had 46.7% of his 3-point shots. So he's definitely a sniper. And he's visited Virginia. He loves everything about Virginia. He seems like he's a guy perfectly made to fit in Virginia's offense. It's going to be a real recruiting battle because he's already visited Virginia, Notre Dame, and Stanford, which he said he's not really considering Stanford anymore. So he is planning visits to Ohio State, Louisville, Marquette, and Wisconsin. He is, even though he's visited Notre Dame, it was when Mike Brey was the coach there. So he plans to revisit Notre Dame now that they have a new coach. Plus Kyle Getter, who recruited him for Virginia, is now the associate head coach at Notre Dame. And so he's going to give them another look. But it'll be interesting to see how he narrows things down. He wants to go somewhere where he can win, where he can be developed into an NBA player, where he has where the team plays hard for the coach. So Virginia can check all of those boxes. And he says his game fits into multiple kinds of offensive playing styles. He appreciates good defense. So again, he sounds exactly like a guy that fits into Virginia's program. And I think he wants to make a commitment before his college or his high school senior year season starts, which won't be for a while. So he's got time, but certainly a guy that to keep your eye on, and Virginia will be recruiting hard in the coming weeks and months. And I guess while we're at it, I don't know that since the last time we talked, Virginia has added Ron Sanchez to their coaching staff. And certainly we'll welcome Ron back to Charlottesville, he and his lovely family. Great guy, had great relationship with him when he was here the first time. He came with Tony from Washington State to Charlottesville and was a key contributor to building this program. I think he's going to step into that chief recruiting role, I believe, and go out there and beat the bushes all over the country for talent. And certainly he is a guy who can recognize that he's a sharp recruiter and a really good basketball mind. So as associate head coach, only strengthens Virginia's basketball staff.
Yeah, Coach Sanchez, and he comes back now with 5 years of head coaching experience too. So that'll just make him even more valuable to Tony Bennett in the Virginia basketball program. So yeah, huge news there, getting a guy like that back in the fold. Well, so we're caught up on the other sports. We've got to focus on baseball for lots of good reasons, and we'll talk some more as we get closer and closer to the first pitch for Virginia this weekend. In the meantime, Jerry, you talked earlier about steaks. I know among our sponsors, we have some great steaks to talk about. So let's go ahead and thank the sponsors as we're wrapping up.
Yeah, I've had steaks all over the country, and Aberdeen Barn is Virginia's finest steakhouse right here under our noses. So it can match up with those steakhouses out in Omaha. Theirs might be a little bit fresher because the stockyards are only a little bit away from downtown Omaha, but Aberdeen Barn is a wonderful place, great atmosphere, great service, great food. Go by and give them some of your business. And we'd like to thank them and our other sponsors of these podcasts, the Good Feet Store with Jonathan Cotton. I see where they're opening up another store or two, I think in Bristol, Tennessee, Chris. They're everywhere. They're like the guy in Ted Lasso, the Roy Kent. I can't sing that song because it's got an expletive in there, but here they're here, they're there, they're everywhere. Good Feet Store. So go by and pay them a visit. Whether you're having discomfort walking, running, or not even discomfort, just want to feel better. They have specially designed arches, especially for your foot. They go to great measures to measure your foot and form those arches specifically to your foot. And I can personally testify, I'm a customer, and that it's made a difference with me, and I'm sure it will with you as well. So please, if you visit either one of those two great sponsors, tell them the Hootie and Chris sent you, and we appreciate their support. That's the only way we can come to you with these podcasts. And thank you for all your feedback. I had a lot of feedback on our podcasts over the past week, and one guy in particular I know who is doesn't throw out good comments about people very often. And he says he loves our podcast, Chris, because of the insight that we bring with all of our years of experience and knowledge of the Virginia basketball, not just basketball, but the Virginia athletic programs and the inside information that we garner from our sources. And they really appreciate what we have to say and keeping them attuned to what's going on with Virginia. So thank you for your feedback, and keep listening.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because I for me, selfishly, I just have fun doing it. I learn as much every podcast as the listeners do. So a lot of fun for us to be able to do this as well. We'll go to jerryratcliffe.com for the latest on Virginia sports. Also go to augustafreepress.com and visit our sponsors, as Jerry said. For Jerry Ratcliffe, the Hall of Famer, I'm Chris Graham signing off. Everyone have a great week.